Hello, happy Friday, everyone. Women of the World Network. Hello, this is Elle, and I have our special guest, our newest member with us today, this morning. Elisabeth, welcome.
So happy to be here, Elle, and really glad
Great
to
to
be
have you.
women of the
Great
world.
to have you. Awesome. I'm excited about our conversation this morning. This is an interesting topic, and I think once you hear about it, for those who are mothers and parents, it's going to be a good conversation, I think. But let me, before we jump onto that, let me introduce Elisabeth. Elisabeth is an author, speaker, and award-winning parent educator. She started joyful parenting coaching when she saw how isolated and stressed out parents today are. She knows that parenting is a skill, one we use to learn in tight knit, multi-age communities, and that today has to be learned through books, videos, and parenting professionals. She believes 100% is people's ability to learn and grow so they can create the happy, harmonious homes they desire and deserve. With over 50 plus hours working with actual children and 7 years of supporting parents, Elisabeth is your go-to coach for your parenting needs. Welcome. How exciting. It's great to have you. So, great to have you here, Elizabeth. Yes.
Yeah, one quick correction.
Go ahead.
Just that it's 50,000 hours.
Oh, 50,000 with over 50. Okay.
If I
Awesome.
did that wrong, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, 50,000 hours plus. That's a lot of hours.
We talk about 10,000 hours to mastery, and so much of what I do is coming from that deep foundation and deep understanding from just having dealt with so many kids.
Yeah, that's a lot of hours, 50,000. Yes, that makes sense. Some zeros are missing there. Thank you for that correction. That's awesome. So one of my favorite questions before we jump, I always ask is what makes you unique and what makes you authentic?
I mean, in terms of parenting coaching, sort of two answers come to mind for that. One is that I do come to it from a very practical point of view and from education. And that is reflected in, I mean, we all sort of have our biases and our lenses through which we see the world. And coming from education means that I am a big plan of like forward thinking, forward planning. What teachers do is we get our content standards, and then we go about deciding what are we going to teach we look at the content standards. By the end of this unit, the student will be able to do X, Y, or Z. And then we back plan, say, okay, this is what I need to teach. How many weeks do I have to teach it? How can I chunk that out into manageable pieces? And that's really the way I look at parenting. So I say, Elle, who do you want your child to be at 21? If you're sending your child out to an internship, for example, what qualities and characteristics do you want the boss to see and recognize in your child? And that's where we start. So that's our endpoint. That's our goal. That's what we're creating. Now let's back plan and say, what do those qualities and characteristics look like for a toddler, elementary, middle, high school student? So that's kind of a way of looking at things. It's very, I call it proactive, very proactive. So the parents who come to me are often the very proactive ones. They may be having a crisis in the moment. In general, however, they're thinking big picture, and they're thinking long term, and they're thinking, I want to make sure that I've got this down and that this molehill doesn't become a mountain, which is why I'm coming to see you. But on the whole, they're really pretty on top of things. Sort of share that reason. So that's one thing that makes me unique as a parenting coach. And then I think what makes me unique as a person is that, well, in some ways, like my daughter says, like, Mom, you're such a 5-year-old. And she doesn't mean that in the childish sense. she means it in the childlike sense.
Mhm.
To play, I love to be silly. I love to be goofy. I have a ton of kind of bounce off the wall energy. And again, when people come to work with me, if they're looking for this sort of calm, centered, consummate professional, forget it. Forget it.
Mhm.
I want to have fun. So when my clients come to me, we better be able to laugh, and we better be able to have fun, and we better be able to look at the silly aspects of things. And from my 50,000 hours of working kids, one of the things that I can give to parents is that I speak kid. And part of that is I can teach parents how to use their bodies and their voices and their imaginations to engage
Mhm.
kids in dealing with them successfully. Because, of course, play is the language of young kids.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for them, there's no difference between play and work. And
Right.
so when we make work feel like play, to them, that's learning and it's engaging and it's fun and they want to do it. So,
Mhm.
one of the big challenges of having a little kid is to figure out, how do I make the daily grind? They get up, they get dressed, they get your shoes on, the use the potty, brush your teeth. How do I make that be part of the game, part of the
Mhm.
playfulness, and part of this energy of like, the world's a wonderful, exciting place.
Mhm. Yeah.
Hurry up, you got to get going. We got to get you to school. I've got a
Right.
meeting too.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. I think it's so relatable to kids, right? So they can relate to that, and they can, once they start relating to that, having my own kids, they're gonna absorb the information better, right? And the other thing you mentioned, which is so interesting, how you in your work, you think from where you want your child to be, who you want your child to be at 21, and then we go back from there, backwards. We work from there, and so I think part of it is probably us parents, when kids are young, even me, like watching my nephew right now, right, to see some patterns that child, things that he likes to do or she likes to do, things that um, they tend to prefer over some others, and so if we develop that pattern more, that's probably part of it that helps, right, to strengthen that and really develop their inclinations early on and help them build on whatever they already have as natural desires or natural wishes or curiosities, right, growing up.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
so interesting. Hmm. Hmm.
And, I have a middle school moms Facebook group. And
Uh-huh.
a big topic on the middle school moms Facebook group is how to motivate. How do I motivate my kid? How do I get my kid to care? How do I get them engaged?
Yeah.
And of course, there's an aspect of a middle schooler who is having to kind of like not get too excited about anything and be, a little bit pulled back, like it's cool, it's chill. And at the same time, we do expect that age group to have activities and things that they're truly interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, our laser focus on kids' academics and their academic skills and the drive towards getting into a good college means that we are taking so much ownership of
Mm-hmm.
and their natural progression isn't happening.
That's a good
We
one.
allow for that natural curiosity that you were talking about, and
Mhm.
we look to see what's their interest, and we say, okay, let's build on that. Because really, if you think of K-8 education, our goal is to create a learner,
Mhm.
and hopefully a lifelong learner,
Mhm.
somebody who's passionate about learning, somebody who's curious, somebody who wants to figure things out. So really, we don't need to teach anything specific. All we need to teach is that process of learning. And that can be done through so many different avenues. So if we follow the child down the path of what they're interested in and what they're curious about, we can augment it, we can supplement it and bring new things to the child's vista,
Mhm.
right? that's a very different approach from this is what you're having to do. This is what's important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I so agree. And I think instead of giving it, like putting it on them or pushing them into, okay, this is you need to do, like you said, because you need to get an A, because we are getting you into, I don't know, uh, this UCLA tech engineering faculty, like, because we want you to be an engineer. And so you need to do, I think there is also, it's so important, instead of doing that, I think it's so important to actually teach kids how to think for themselves. I think it's so way more important to just, instead of just putting it on them, just basic skill. And I think that's kind of been forgotten almost, because we have this availability of everything, information, and you go search on Google, so there is no need to think, but for life skill, for them to really find themselves or go through challenging situations.
It's not a problem that we have Google and have information at our fingertips. It's a problem that we don't allow children to be critical thinkers and problem solvers.
Right.
And that starts from how we interact with our kids. And it really starts from, asking questions more than telling our kids what to do.
Yes.
And, it's a developmental progression. You don't want to ask a 2-year-old, like, do you want to go put on your shoes now? Because the answer is very likely to be no. And
right.
So if you really need them to put on your shoes, that's not a great thing. But you can begin to start to say, we're going to the park. Is that, you want to come to the park? Yes. Okay. I want to go to the park. Then you can ask, what needs to happen before we can go to the park? That's where you'll see even a pre-verbal child, right? One who's not expressively using language yet. That pre-verbal child will run to the door and their shoes are, and they'll sit down and they'll try to start putting down their shoes. If it's the park and they're excited about it.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. So that we can build on, and right, really looking at a situation of well, what needs to happen now? And that it goes to for the milk gets spilled, right? So instead of swooping in and cleaning up the milk, looking at your child and going, oops, the milk spilled. What needs to happen now? And again, the 2-year-old is going to run probably for your very best dish towel that you don't actually want to use for the milk. But they get the concept, and they're going to run, and they're going to go do that. And when we build on that kind of involvement, curiosity, and interest in wanting to do things, by helping them to become critical thinkers and problem solvers, we have a much better chance of knowing that they have some autonomy and some control over what they're learning.
Oh, I love that.
And I had another thought, and I just want to clarify. So when I say think of who you want your child to be at 21, I'm thinking, what values and qualities and characteristics do you want? I'm not thinking what degrees, what training, what skills. I'm thinking, how do you want them to show up in the world?
Yeah.
And so that's an important distinction. I was talking to a first and a third grader, a brother and a sister, and they had on their soccer uniforms, and it was May. And I said, isn't soccer a fall sport? You've got your soccer uniforms on. They're like, no, we're on the year-round teams. I'm like, oh, you guys must love soccer. They're like, I was like, oh, I said, is there a sport that you like better, that you'd rather be doing? And they each had a sport that they would rather be doing.
Oh, wow.
So I went back to Mom and I said, I'm just curious. Like, I was chatting with the kids and I expected them to say, soccer's the best.
Right.
And, they didn't. They're like, it's okay. And so, Mom, I'm curious, why are the kids doing year-round soccer? if they don't absolutely love it. She's like, I know. But in this town, if they aren't on the travel soccer team right from the get-go, they're not going to make it onto the high school soccer team. And I just feel like playing sports in high school is so important. Just like,
Wow.
that's
Wow.
a big risk, right? That is a big risk. That is an enormous amount of control to take over
Yes.
the child. And
Yeah.
now, when they come to me as with their kids being 7th or 8th grade, going like, I have to battle my kid to get my kid to soccer. And, she keeps saying she wants to quit, but I know that, she just sticks through it and she gets on the high school team. That's setting yourself up for a lot of conflict and rebellion later on. Or worse is just the disengagement from the world.
Engagement. Right.
Why should I put any energy into anything? All I can do anyway is what my mom wants me to do. And whatever I do, it's not good enough anyway. So why should I do that?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
That is such a great story. And how many families, I'm listening to you, and how many families have that? And yeah, it's such a great story. Yeah, I can relate actually to even me growing up. And I usually went to every activity that I actually wanted to. But it's interesting, and you're right. It causes disengagement. It causes, somebody else controlling my life anyway. Um, lower belief, like disbelief in themselves doing something or wanting something, and that's not fulfilled. Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, that's such a great example. Hmm. Yeah, even though I growing up, I always did, like I was listening to you, I always did what I wanted to do. And I kind of went into my, and I grew up in an environment where I had to actually use my own transportation, public transportation, to get to in a different country, right? So completely on my own, independent, but really doing what I wanted to do. And I was involved in so many activities. And we did have a different in terms of the high school kind of setup. So it was not connected to that. I mean, I see mom's point too, being a mom myself, but I think it's just so important to catch that and realize that. And no matter what the school or college is, really just reverse that and just give the kids, because in the long term, it's so much, they're going to be so much way better off.
Yes, right. So we know from studies that there are benefits to being on sports teams. And
Yeah.
so, she's read a study and she's thinking, and she's that, right? Kids who are on sports teams have higher grade point averages, have lower onset of sexual activity, right? Of intimacy, that's delayed, so they get a chance to mature a little bit more. There's lower drug and alcohol use generally. So she's not wrong.
Right.
And at the same time, it's just the gamble, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like 8 years. 8 years.
Yeah.
And you think probably there are other solutions, like find a different school or start a new team when you get to the high school, have a B team, or do a sport for which there aren't tryouts.
Yeah.
Usually, things like track or field we'll take whoever will come. Usually, schools will have it. And if not, do the activity outside of school. Right? There are a lot of different ways to skin this cat that don't involve 8 years of having your child in year-round soccer.
Right. Which he's not or she's not even interested in the first place.
They like soccer. They don't hate it. But how can you tell if a kid should be on the year-round team or should be on the dance team? To me, you tell because they've got the soccer ball between their feet underneath the table, and you are constantly saying, stop playing with that ball, go put it away, go do something else. That's the kid who should be on the travel soccer team. That's
Yeah.
the kid who is living and breathing and thinking about soccer every moment.
The moment, right, right. Yeah. Yeah, it's such a great point that you made and distinction on values, Elizabeth. I love that. Yeah, making sure on that versus putting something on them that maybe, and a lot of moms do that too, right? Like they wanted to do something when they were young, when they were kids, but they never did. And so they now putting it on their kids, or dads for that matter, both parents. And then, but that kid never wanted it because it's a mom's wish. It always has been. Um, yeah, and that brings me to this one last question is, what do you see some of the main challenges today when it comes to parenting? Um,
Yeah,
mhm,
that's a big question. I have a whole talk on that. Uh, here's the really short answer.
mhm,
One, we no longer live in homogeneous groups. So, and this is not a horrible thing in some ways because it allows for a lot more variation and for people to do things different ways. But it just makes it harder to know what you should do.
mhm,
You're answering the question of, how should X happen?
mhm,
You can go on the internet and see 20 different ways of doing it. That doesn't make it, it means puts a lot of onus on you to read through all the different 20 ways and to weigh them and to evaluate them and to decide.
yeah,
Whereas before you used to just go to your neighbor and say, well, how do I potty train? And your neighbor told you and they were doing it the way your other neighbor was doing it. And great, this is the way we potty train. And so you just kind of follow it along. So that's one real challenge. The other real challenge is the structures that we used to have in place that honored family are no longer there, or we're no longer using them as much. So
mm,
a much higher, for example, is not in, they're not associated with a religious institution that meets together regularly. And because of that, they're not taking that time to come together as a family, right? Going to church, going to synagogue, going to temple. That's a family activity.
mhm,
And we no longer have that. And we no longer have that sort of standing around in the fellowship hall afterwards with our coffee and our cake and the kids running around and getting to see lots of different parents and lots of different families so that you and I could have a casual conversation of going like, oh God, Julie is driving me nuts. All of a sudden it's taking us like an hour and a half for bedtime. And you can go like, oh, yeah, have you tried this? Have you done that? So I no longer have access to people I trust, people I know, people who've seen my kids for those casual conversations. So I can do those little course corrections.
mhm,
Our kids feeling like we are a family together because the emphasis is so much on the individual child's development. We don't have that time. Even family dinner is really hard to come by. And
mhm,
growing up in California, if somebody called between 6 and 8 o'clock, that's when the phone was still on the wall. You did not answer the phone because the only person who would have the unmitigated audacity to call between 6 and 8 o'clock were the salespeople. And if it was a real emergency and somebody really needed you, they would call back. So yes, parents were still going to PTA meetings or to choir rehearsal or to something else. But there was sort of this 6 to 8 chunk in the day when families were going to gather and they were going to have dinner before they redispersed again. You didn't have, classes and tutoring and team sports right in the middle of dinner time, right?
right,
Kids after school activities.
right,
And that wound up by 5:30, by 6 o'clock, you were kind of,
mhm,
that's the second reason. The third reason is what I call the checklist child.
mhm,
And that's this drive, this fear that if they're not in the very top colleges, they're not going to be successful. They're not going to have access to the kind of wealth and opportunities that we had. And while there's a degree to which that is true, it's not as bad as people think. And so it's really not just Harvard, Stanford. It's not just this. There are still lots of opportunities a tier down that don't require us to have put our traveling.
Interesting.
We're busy checking that off that we become product managers.
Yeah.
It's the product.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. As a mother, I don't think that at all. I actually, if my kid gets to IB, yes, but for me, that's not where it stops. They create their own, and it's interesting to hear that. That's a lot of parents still there, because I think there are so many opportunities outside of Ivy League schools as well. And the fact that the person goes to Ivy League does not guarantee the same pattern does not guarantee success also. So we create it ourselves. And so I think, so it's interesting. But it's funny how we always come to the time we finish so quickly, because it's such an interesting conversation. And I love this conversation because I learned myself from you, Elisabeth. My kids are not as small anymore, but it's still this issue. As a parent, I totally get it. And it's just interesting. And from our short conversation, I can feel how much value you bring to your clients you work with, to the parents, because that outside perspective is needed. And like you said, because we are not no longer close with families, we need that feedback from someone, and you can create that for them. You can give that for them. Sometimes we can be blinded as moms, right? Because we are so on our agenda. We're busy. We do so many things. So ladies, please connect with Elisabeth. She has tons of such great information. I mean, we can go on and on and on talking about this. But yes, please connect. We're going to post the links how to connect with her in the comments here. And if there are any events coming up, Elisabeth, did you want to share? And we can also post that in the comments as well.
Well, I am particularly interested in finding middle school moms. So moms of kids sort of, fifth through eighth grade. I have a middle school moms group on Facebook. I would love for you to join us there. I am also developing I'm calling it the Roundtable, Middle School Moms Roundtable, which is a membership site where we'll have speakers come in. We'll do book talks. We'll do what I'm calling table talks, which is not bringing in extra experts, but just bringing in me and saying, okay, what are we all doing about allowance? Let's have a conversation. What's working for people? What's people's thinking around it?
That's great.
A place where we can begin to, right? We need the group of people that we know.
Yes.
And again, it used to be our neighbors at the kitchen table. That's why I'm calling them table talks. And now we need to create a community of people that says, yeah, let me travel this journey with you, and have somebody so that I could do that when my kid is driving me nuts. I could get a quick course correct or just a new idea or perspective from somebody.
I love that. That's such a great idea for the community like that. Yeah, I love it. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for creating that. Thank you for taking the time to jump on the conversation today. This was so great. And I wish everyone great weekend ahead. Connect with each other and never forget how wonderful and amazing and wow woman you are. Thank you, Elisabeth.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.